In Kentucky, we don't just take chances, we bet big. This month, I'm sitting down with 4 Kentuckians who made 4 bold moves and asking one question: what was the biggest bet that you ever took on yourself? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Town & Country Ford. No matter where life's adventures lead you, Town & Country Ford is along for the ride. You know what? This was a moment that really mattered. Was it personal or was it work related?
For me personally, I've really grown in my faith.
When did it finally hit you that you are with one of the most iconic brands in the world?
If you ever left like what you're doing, what would you want to do?
Would you say that's probably the best bet that you took on yourself in your life?
The baseballs kind of change, from year to year, depending upon what they want them to do.
My next guest on the Best Bet podcast is Rick Redman. He is the Vice President of Corporate Communications for Hillrich and Bradsby, the makers of the iconic Louisville Slugger bat. And Rick, it's so great to have you on here. I've obviously timed this in time for like opening weekend of baseball, which I know you are counting down to. So that's when this is going to go. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
It's always great catching up with you.
It's great to see you, and I'm thrilled for what you're doing with these podcasts. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And
we got to share the good news of Kentucky.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. There's so many great things going on in the Commonwealth, and people from the Commonwealth who are doing just fabulous things. And so it's great to be able to share those stories. But yeah, baseball season is upon us.
Do you have so many people that when you tell them who you work for, people go, "Oh, must be the best job in the entire world."
And it is.
It is. It still is. I mean,
yeah.
When did it finally hit you that you are with one of the most iconic brands in the world? And please tell us your secret to getting into the front door.
Well, things just kind of worked out. I'm a big believer in that things just all kind of happen for a reason. And I was fortunate enough back in my previous life. Of course, I worked in television, news, and sports here in Louisville. And after that, I was the PR person and VP of Corporate Communications for the Kentucky Lottery Corporation. And during that stint, I had the opportunity to become friends with one of the executives at Hillrich and Bradsby through our children who were playing t-ball together. And then they ended up playing soccer together. And, one fateful day when we were working the concession stand, which is every parent's
when you get that
obligation.
Yeah, this weekend you're working the concession stand when it's like 25 degrees outside.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So we're working the concession stand together, and my friend Bill, we're just, in between, handing out snow cones and hot dogs and bubble gum. We're chit-chatting, and he says, gosh, what if you ever left like what you're doing? What would you want to do? And I said, man, I don't want to work with you guys.
Yeah.
I said, I would want Bill Williams' job, and Bill Williams was my predecessor. God rest his soul. Great guy. And I knew Bill through my time in TV news and sports, had done stories with him, and he was a wonderful guy. And he was there for a long time. He was there for 36 years. And so, eventually a little time passed, and my friend Bill reached out and said, hey, Bill Williams is retiring. And I'm like, yeah, I'd heard that. I sent him his first sleeve of golf balls with a note that said, here's your first 3 you can lose. And and the next thing I know, Bill is saying, well, would you be interested in that job? And I'm like, holy cow, you got to be kidding me. Absolutely, I would be interested.
That's just not an opportunity that comes up too
exactly.
often.
And so, I've always loved baseball. I played baseball when I was young. Like most guys, you get to the point where you can't hit the curveball anymore, or you can't catch up to the fastball, and you have to give up the game. But
it's not really a game that you just want to on the weekend with your bros.
No. It's it is a grind if you really want to be good and competitive. But I just it was one of those things where I just wanted to continue to love the game. Regardless of. I couldn't really play it at that high level anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to continue in the game, and I've always loved it. been a huge fan. And then I worked in television sports. And so I had that sports background. And so that's what was the catalyst for them thinking, hey, you would be the perfect fit for this job. And so lo and behold, next thing I know, he's asking me to send me his resume. He wanted to get in front of the CEO. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really looking for a job. I've got to put a resume together. And so spent the weekend doing that and sent the resume over. And, probably 6 weeks later, I was there. And I've been there for 23 years now.
Wow.
And it's just been a wonderful ride. If you love baseball, there's really no better place to work than Louisville Slugger, which now is owned by Wilson Sporting Goods. And Wilson Sporting Goods is a fabulous company. It's just that they have such a great history in baseball. Louisville Slugger is now celebrating its 142nd year in baseball. Wilson has been making ball gloves for over 100 years. And so, they've got a wide array of baseball and softball products that, we get to help promote. But, we just have so much history, and that's a big part of what we do on the communications and public relations side with the Louisville Slugger brand, are telling those amazing stories about our brand and its history, and the Wilson brands and their history. And
the legendary leadership there too, right? Like, who was the CEO that hired you?
So John Hilrick IV was the CEO who hired me. He is still there. His dad, Jack Hilrick, who was John Andrew Hilrick III, but everybody knows him as Jack. Of course, Jack was so instrumental in this city and has had such a huge impact in this community. He was one of the owners of the Redbirds at one time, which became the Louisville River Bats, and then, of course, the Bats. He was one of their owners. He was instrumental in getting the Louisville Slugger name on the ballpark, Louisville Slugger Field. And, of course, he was instrumental in working with Mayor Jerry Abramson in getting the Louisville Slugger Museum and factory on West Main Street, which now is celebrating its 30th anniversary. It was 1996 when the big 120-foot tall bat, went up. Actually, it was October of 95 when that happened, and then the museum opened in 1996. So we're 30 years into the museum and about 7 million visitors, telling the incredible history of the Louisville Slugger brand and all the players who have used Louisville Slugger throughout their careers, including 80% of the members of the Hall of Fame.
Right. You're rubbing elbows with history in so many ways. Jack, John, what have they taught you, not only about this specific business, but what have you learned about leadership from them?
I'll tell you.
Because I feel like it's always a pivot coming from like a broadcasting background and being this natural storyteller, but then having to pivot into a space where you're like, oh, wow, I'm still learning.
Oh, absolutely.
And how can I make this brand and the story, how can I lift it up, right?
Jack Hilrick is now, I guess Jack's probably 84, and he is still our chairman. He still comes in the office a couple days a month, and where my office is located, he walks right past my office when he comes in or when he leaves. And my door is glass, so you can see through it. And whenever he comes by, he will usually poke his head in and sit down and chat for a while. And every time I talk to Jack Hilrick, I learn something from this man who grew up in the business, was born into the business, was forced to become president of Hilrick and Brasby Company in Louisville Slugger at the tender age of 28 when his father passed away. And he knew, and he will be the first to tell you, that he was not ready to be president of this iconic brand and this iconic company at the age of 28. But he had mentors who brought him along. And I think that, that's one of the things that really sticks, and hits home for me in learning from Jack and John, is that mentorship is so important, that you have to learn from really good people, or you have to make sure that you bring along people onto your team that you can mentor and bring along, and that's really a really huge part of it. another big part of it for us at Hilrick and Bradsby and is just that the Hilrick family treats their employees as if they're part of the family. It really is. It's a family-owned company, but the employees are part of the family. They treat them that way, and it's an open door kind of approach. You can approach our CEO. You can walk in his office, or you can stop him in the hallway, or you can stop him around the coffee machine, and feel very comfortable in talking to him about anything. And so I think that that's one of the things that's helped make us successful, and also hiring people who really care about the brand and care about the history. Many of the people who work for us most actually are people who love the game of baseball.
You kind of have to. I feel like that's the first requirement for getting through the door.
Well, it sure makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
We don't have to train people about the game if they walk in the door and they know a lot about it. And so, one of the things that we talk about there, I just had that conversation this morning, is that when you work at our company, a lot of times the conversations kind of veer off into what's going on in the baseball world today, and then we have to steer ourselves back to, oh, wait a minute, we've got to talk about business here and stop talking baseball.
It's research.
It's research, exactly. Research. We call it research.
Ongoing education.
Exactly.
At the company. You've literally had a front row seat to baseball history. I mean, to be in the middle of it. Is there a moment or a bat or a game or something that made you take a step back and say, wow, I'm a part of something that is so much bigger than I ever realized?
We get to interact with so many of these great stars of baseball history, ones who are retired, ones who are still currently playing. And I think one of the things that always hits home for me every year is our annual Louisville Slugger Living Legend Award, where we honor these players who have made baseball history. But our award is not just for their achievements on the field, it's also for their humanitarian efforts, for their philanthropic work. And when those players come in and getting to know them, and some of them we already know, we've done a lot of things with these players over the years, but then really getting to know more about their philanthropy and why they do the things that they do, that's when it really kind of hits home for me. And, the list of players who've won that award, who've been in, is just incredible. Ernie Banks is, Ernie Banks comes to mind just because he was, such a true gentleman. But Tony Gwynn, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Robinson, Cal Ripken Jr., Johnny Bench. Just the last couple of years, we had Ryan Sandberg, God rest his soul, who passed away with battling cancer. Ricky Henderson, Jim Thome. I mean, it just goes on. And they all made such an impact on the game. And to be able to be with these players and get to know them more on a personal level when their families are there, it just really, helps you see them beyond the star that they are as an athlete. Right. And, that's just one of the things that I've always really, truly enjoyed.
Right. And it has to be humbling for them, too.
It is.
To be appreciated for something more than just performance.
It is. When these guys come in, they really are genuinely struck by the moment and by the accolades and honor that they're getting, because they're used to being praised for their achievements on the field. And this is part of it. And the fans who come to the Living Legend Award presentations, they love that because they want to hear those stories. But it's also great to be able to tell the stories about these things that these guys do off the field and the impact that they've been able to make because of the stardom that they achieved as a baseball player and having the means and the opportunities to do those things.
All right. Well, I know opening weekend is coming up. More stories are going to come out this season. Let's pause for a quick break. Coming right back with Rick Redman. Stay with us. I grew up in a Ford family. My dad worked at the Louisville Ford assembly plant. And it wasn't just a brand for us, it was a way of life. And that's the thing about Ford, is that they're woven into a part of our culture here in Kentucky and across America. So no matter where life's adventures may take you, Town & Country Ford is along for the ride. And I'm back with Rick Redman. He's the Vice President of Corporate Communications for Horwich and Bradsby, the makers of the iconic Louisville Slugger bat. We are on the eve of another season. I feel like last year, would you say, what was it, the torpedo bat? Did that like take over the world last year?
It certainly did.
What's going to take over the world this year?
Well, you know, the big topic of conversation throughout this entire baseball season is really going to be about what's going to happen next year in 2027, because all baseball fans and all of us who love the game are very fearful that there's going to be a lockout. The contract between the Players Association and Major League Baseball is coming to a conclusion, and they have to they've got to negotiate a new deal, and so. Many of the owners of the Major League Baseball teams want a salary cap. Some want a salary floor, which means, teams cannot spend any less than this amount on their roster, their budget every year. But others are, also wanting a salary cap. We've got to cap this off because some of the big market teams are just spending, astronomical figures on their rosters. The Los Angeles Dodgers just keep throwing money at players. Shohei Ohtani's already making $70 million a year. They just signed Kyle Tucker for $60 million a year. So they have $130 million tied up in two players when there are lots and lots of smaller market teams like our nearby Cincinnati Reds. I grew up near Cleveland, so I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan. The Dodgers have more money tied up in those two players than some teams like Cleveland will have in their entire roster. So something is going to have to give.
Yeah. Do you think that sets up an unfair playing advantage? I mean, if some of these teams can't go after big money players, do they even stand a chance?
Well, that's the argument. The argument is, wow, how do we compete with that?
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. That's when you look at some of the smaller market teams, like say the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's challenging for them to be able to compete and go out and go out and sign players or keep really good players who they've developed. Because when those players' contracts are up, then they're looking to get paid in a big way, and it's hard for those smaller market teams like Pittsburgh. Or Cleveland or Cincinnati to be able to compete in that marketplace. So it's a real challenge. So that is going to be the hot topic throughout the course of the season. But one of the things I've learned about baseball over the years is that even when there are these distractions like that off the field, there are amazing things that take place on the field every single day. And if you watch, the baseball highlights every day, you are seeing things. You're like, holy cow, I've never seen that before. Just amazing achievements and accomplishments of, players. The game just keeps getting better and better in my view. There are the folks who go, oh, the game was so much better back in those days. And like, well, it was pretty good. But I think, today's players are so good because they're so well trained. The analytics, all the technology that exists today helps these players improve. They're
a different
better
player altogether. I mean, can you imagine like players today competing with a player?
Oh my God. It would. Yeah.
It's like the bionic man these days. Yeah.
And that's not to say that if you took players from an earlier era and put them in today, and then they had the same advantages that players today have, like the technology and the analytics and the training, the physical training, all those things, I think those guys would rise.
Oh, yeah, they would.
You know, there's no question. I mean, Babe Ruth was Babe Ruth, and Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio and, and Roberto Clemente and Jackie Robinson. I mean, if you took those guys and put them in the game today, they would adjust pretty quickly because they were fantastic athletes. But the players today are just absolutely amazing. And it's a great game, and it's so entertaining. And baseball attendance is up the last couple of years.
Why do you think that is? What has brought people back out? I mean, I feel like it's still a pretty affordable place to go and have a day out. If you can get good prices on tickets at some of these key cities.
There are affordable ways to do it.
Yeah.
It can also get a little pricey.
Yes, it can.
But there are affordable ways to do it. And you just got to find those ways to get those affordable tickets and get in the ballpark. And I just think that because there's so many really great players right now, a lot of stars. I think Major League Baseball has done a really good job in the last few years of promoting those stars. There was criticism a few years ago that, hey, they needed to do a better job of promoting some of these guys and getting them out there and making them as visible or as notable as some of the stars in the NFL or the NBA.
Yep.
And so I think they've done a really good job of getting a lot of these players out there. But a lot of it is that we have really great, exciting, young players, that are just coming through the game. Bobby Witt Jr. in Kansas City, great young star. One of our top guys, Kyle Schwarber, he's not so young anymore. But he's not old. But, he led the National League in home runs last year. He played at IU, played for Indiana. He grew up in just north of Cincinnati. Reds fans were hoping that they were going to be able to get Kyle Schwarber this year and see him in a Reds uniform because he was a local guy and his contract was up. But unfortunately for Reds fans, he decided to stay in Philly, but he got paid in a big way.
Social media helps so much too, right? Whether it's edits, whether it's capturing, you talk about there's going to be so many moments coming up in the season that just grab your attention. The way that TikTok has grabbed some of those moments and repackaged them, they should be getting a cut from half of these places because it makes you want to go and experience that for yourself.
There's no question about it.
And the ability for the players to kind of promote themselves.
Yeah,
on
social
Instagram
media has had a huge impact on increasing interest in the game. Instagram, TikTok, they've done a great job. Each team does a great job, I think, of promoting their team and their players. Individual players, some are doing a really great job at promoting themselves. I remember a little more than a few years ago, maybe 10 or more years ago, when social media was really just kind of starting to ramp up. There were some players who were like, I'm not doing that. I'm not touching that.
That's not going to last.
That's not, I want to concentrate on baseball. I'm not going to do that. And then they started seeing, the guys who were doing it and the success it was, bringing them the more notoriety, which, that's the society and the world that we live in. The more numbers you have, it's an
extension of your brand, and it's your ability to get a brand partnership. I can't imagine. I mean, it is literally part of your job.
Yeah, it's creating your personal brand.
Yeah.
And the players who do that are the ones who are getting paid. But they're making money for their futures, because that's the one thing. These guys do make a lot of money, but. You got to remember that what happens after they retire.
Right. And how long of a career? And how long can their bodies put up with that?
Right. You hope that they can be wise enough to prepare themselves and financially for their future because, find out what they're going to do after they retire. But the social media part of it plays a huge, huge role.
And speaking of career space, that makes me think of what do you see? You've been in a place where you've worked in sports and you've made this transition to this particular career. What advice would you give those that love sports, love baseball? You're in a position where you kind of see the landscape changing, what things would you suggest to people that love this game and love sports? What should they look at, and how should they be taking advantage of opportunities before them? Because the landscape's changing, and I feel like you see that.
It's constantly changing. It's changing all the time. When I think back to even, when I started 23 years ago, how much it has changed from that time frame, and even just the last few years.
Yeah.
So I guess the best advice I could give is just be willing to change.
Yeah.
Be willing to change along with it, and don't be, someone who throws up, the no sign. I'm not going to do that, and that's like,
I'm not going to do social media.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to change, because if there's anything that I think I've learned in life is that change is inevitable. It always happens. We're constantly changing, and those who are willing to adapt and change are the ones who are going to be able to move forward and have success. And those who resist change are the ones who oftentimes are going to be left behind, or then find themselves trying to find a way to catch up. So, change is inevitable. It really is. We used to say either be willing to change or get run over. Basically, that's what's going to happen, is that
or AI will replace you.
Yeah, exactly. AI will replace you. There's no question about it. So, I think that's really it, is just be willing to change. Don't be resistant to it. I think we all are, because we get in our comfort zones. And it's like, oh, this is so comfortable now. I've got this licked. I had to change, and I figured it out, and now they want me to change again. Or this is all this. Technology is changing everything, but you have to be willing to accept it. And I think that's, the older we get, that becomes harder to do. We become more resistant to it. But that's one of the things I'd really try to coach myself on is, okay, be willing to change.
Yeah. And the game has changed too.
Yeah, it
Baseball
sure
has changed. And what do you think, what good things have remained the same? And what do you think has moved forward in a new, more vibrant way that you think new audiences can embrace?
One of the great things about baseball is that the statistics have been kept forever. And so you can compare players of today to players who played even in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And so that's one of the things I love about the game of baseball, is that you can, and certainly there are those different eras had some differences. There was the dead ball era, where the ball wasn't as lively. And then there's been more of a live ball era. And then, there are people who, think that the baseballs kind of change, from year to year, depending upon what they want them to do. I can't swear to that, but I know that there are people who believe that. So one of the great things about baseball is that, you can compare eras statistically, how Babe Ruth did versus Shohei Ohtani today. Those statistics are all there. This is one of the great things about the game. But I think some of the newer things that they brought into the game are really helping. I like the pitch clock that they've implemented. That I think it helps pick up the pace of the game. This is a different world that we live in today. People, back in the 30s and 40s, people would listen to baseball games on the radio, and people still do, but that was a huge part of the pastime. That's why it was the national pastime, because people could listen to a game on the radio while they were, working in the afternoon, or, whatever the case may be, and really get engaged with it. But today, games have dragged out. They were getting to where they were 3 hours and 15 minutes,
yes.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And, it really makes it tough, in the society that we live in today, that's, more of the microwave. We want things instantly or faster. And
that's why we gravitate towards TikTok. And if I can see like a replay in like 15 seconds and there's music over it.
Yeah. And you know what happened in the game tonight or last night or whatever. And you if somebody brings it up, you don't feel like, you're left out. You can join that conversation. But yeah, I think the pitch clock has helped a lot. Just keeping the game fresh, promoting these players. And I love the new ballparks,
they've made it an experience.
Yeah, they really have, they've really made it a true experience. There's a certain vibe you get when you walk into a Major League Baseball park.
What are your favorites?
Well, gosh, I love Baltimore. Oriole Park at Camden Yards is just fantastic. But, I'm also old school. I love Fenway Park in Boston. I love Wrigley Field in Chicago, the Cubs. Those are just fantastic. I'm a Cleveland fan, so I have an affinity for what's now called Progressive Field. I just can't get used to that name. It was always Jacobs Field to me because it was named after the Jacobs family when the ballpark opened in 1994, and the then Cleveland Indians were really good, and they were going to World Series and competing for World Series. And so that, name Jacobs Field is still ingrained in my mind. But so I love that ballpark too. But, it's hard to get past the old ones. A lot of people forget that the next oldest ballpark after Fenway and Wrigley is Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. And while it's an older stadium, it's a really cool place to watch baseball. It's in such a cool setting there in Chavez Ravine. I don't like the traffic in and out of there. It's horrible to get in and out of there, but it's a beautiful place to watch a baseball game, and the fans there are knowledgeable, and it's a lot of fun. So there are so many, but it's the vibe of the ballparks is just great.
Right. I feel like time stops when you're there.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's just something about sitting and enjoying time with friends and family that you're just totally present.
And that's the great thing about watching a baseball game is that you can watch the game, but you can still be in a conversation with the people you're with or even around you. And there are lots of things to distract you, to see what else is going on. The peanut vendor or the beer vendor, or, what's going on the Jumbotron or what's happening in between innings. And, Milwaukee is another great ballpark.
That's a great ballpark.
A lot of people don't like the ballpark in Milwaukee because it has the retractable roof and all that. But I really like it.
Have you been in Milwaukee in March? Typically,
yeah, I have actually. I actually have. It's called. You worked in Milwaukee.
I worked in Milwaukee,
That's
and
right.
I covered many.
Yeah.
I covered the Brewers. When they opened up that ballpark, man, it just drew like mixed reaction, and I'm like, there's snow on the ground, folks.
Yeah.
I want that
That's
roof
why we
closed.
need a roof.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that always struck me about going to Milwaukee the first time for a baseball game was getting there early and seeing people tailgating at a baseball game.
Absolutely.
I'm like, wait a minute, this is what people do at football games. They're tailgating in Milwaukee for baseball, and they're grilling brats and
name the brat. We'll grill it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. And it's great. And of course, Milwaukee's the one that invented the sausage race, which, now all the other teams
everybody
have copied
has like
them.
a variation of a race, right?
Yeah. I mean, so many other teams have copied that, but Milwaukee really was the
Nationals
originator.
have what? Do we have the presidents?
The presidents.
Presidents.
They have the president's race. Yeah. And Cleveland has a hot dog race, which is really a total ripoff of Milwaukee.
I think horse racing tracks, believe it or not, are starting to get in on like a race outside of horses. Like they'll have like wiener dogs. And just the nacho race.
Yeah.
And
it's just, for a long time, Major League Baseball really trailed behind minor league baseball, which has always done a great job of entertaining fans.
They're a carnival of entertainment.
Yeah, they're just fantastic at it. And Major League Baseball finally realized, hey, there's way more that we can do
I think they're thinking we're Major League Baseball. Like we have to be, we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
You would think, since it's Major League.
Race those presidents around. Let's do it.
That's right.
Right? People want basic entertainment.
They sure do. They sure do. And the proof of that is the Savannah Bananas.
The Savannah. What do you think of the Savannah Bananas?
I love them because they are our partner. And we have sold a lot of Savannah Bananas baseball bats and other products. The bananas are just fantastic
What's
entertainment.
the secret to the Savannah Banana success?
Fans first. That's what it's all about. Jesse Cole, who is one of the founders, he wrote the book, and it's called Fans First. And it's all about, making sure that the fans are put first in every single thing that they do. They talk about friction points. Where are friction points that are friction points for the fans? Is it getting into the stadium? Is it getting their concessions? Is it, something around their seats? And they try to eliminate those friction points because they want everybody to have a great time at their ball games. And, when I went to see the Savannah Bananas play, the first thing that came to mind was, this is like a Broadway show with a baseball game in the middle of it. And that's really what it is.
50 Cent entertaining at halftime.
Yeah,
like in between innings. It's like, what?
There's never a moment where there's silence. I mean, it's just as soon as one thing stops, the next thing starts immediately. And it's amazing. But it has been great for Louisville Slugger and Wilson baseball because we are partners of theirs. We
their look, their feel, everything is so different from what anybody else would do.
Absolutely.
It's just like, we can do that. We can create something crazy.
Yeah, and they just, they don't think any idea is a bad idea. If somebody tosses an idea out, they're like, okay, well, how could we do that? Let's figure it out. And that's one of the things that really makes them successful. But we make their bats. They wear our Evo Shield, which is another one of our brand's uniforms and protective gear. They wear Wilson baseball gloves. And so now we make all the apparel that they sell under our Evo Shield brand. And so it's been very, very good for Louisville Slugger and all of our other brands. Yeah, it really is.
It really is.
Yeah, it's amazing. So they've just been fantastic. And I think they're good for baseball because they have brought a lot of people who were either former baseball fans or marginal baseball fans back to having interest in the game. And I think anything that's good for drawing attention to the game of baseball is great for our brands and great for anybody who really truly is a fan.
Everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Signature Question is sponsored by the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. We're going to raise a glass to you and your success in Louisville Slugger. Kentucky Bourbon Festival is getting ready to celebrate their 35th anniversary, September 10th through the 13th. And tickets are going to go very, very fast. You go to kybourbonfestival.com. So let's raise a glass to you. Looking back over the past year, what would you like to celebrate? Or maybe celebrate with Louisville Slugger that you're like, you know what? This was a moment that really mattered. Was it personal or was it work related?
Wow.
Because we don't take enough time to celebrate that.
We don't.
No.
We don't. I think that for me personally, I've really grown in my faith in the last couple of years especially. And it's something that I needed to do, but I've got this great group of guys who have become, my faith brothers, and that has really changed my entire outlook on things, and it's just made me a better person and a stronger person, and I think that's really the most important thing that's impacted
wonderful.
Me in the last couple of years.
Would you say that's probably the best bet that you took on yourself in your life, like here recently, is to turn and put focus on faith? No question about it. That's awesome.
No question about it, because it changes my perspective on everything.
Yeah. But don't you think too, just even in work, you're able, and it sounds like you're in a workplace where people want to see people doing well, that you're able to be a person that not only speaks your faith, but you show it in your deeds.
Yeah. I work in an environment where that is certainly welcomed. And so, I'm not the type of person I'm ever going to try to force my faith on anybody, but if somebody wants to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, that's really been a huge impact and change for me, and it's brought me a certain peace in my life that I really needed.
Right. I think we all need more of that these days.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
I think the world has made us think, whoa, wait, whoa, what can I do I may not be going out and doing a missionary trip overseas, but I've been trying to think of, what can I do just in my home and in my small group?
Yeah, right.
Like one thing.
Well. Yeah, and sometimes it's just impacting one person. You never know. I think one of the things I've really learned through this journey is that everybody is going through something.
Yes.
Something really, or they've been through some really challenging, difficult times in their lives. We all have, and that's one of the things I try to approach life, that I'm trying not to get angry at something that I could probably have gotten angry at in the past, because I go, I don't know what that guy's going through.
That's right.
I don't have any idea what that guy's going through right now. He you don't know. I mean, his wife could have cancer, or, he may have just lost his mother, or, you just don't know. And so I think if we would all, as human beings, would take a step back and take a look at other human beings as truly, hey, they're a human just like I am. I've been through some stuff. They've probably been through some stuff. Maybe I ought to just relax a little bit.
That's true. That's true. So what do you want to do next? I feel like you have more chapters. You probably have things that you're like, I think I want to do, whether it's within what you're doing now, or there's just other things that you're beginning to tinker with that you think, I want to do this.
Well, I'm at that point in my career where people are starting to ask me, well, when are you going to retire? And it's usually like friends and family who ask me that question. And then it got to the point where people at work are kind of thinking, oh, wow, he's going to retire at some point. So what are we going to do? So we actually have a succession plan in place.
Well, that brings things so full circle, like how you have been brought in. You talk about Jack and John and mentorship, and making sure that everybody, that's really kind of coming full circle. Yeah, it really is. So we have brought on someone, Sean Bowdy, who actually is in the studio with us today. And a lot of the folks who will see this podcast probably are familiar with Sean. You brought me some scoop. Yeah, thank you. That's right. Thank you, Sean. So Sean is a television news and sports person who's has had a career here in Louisville. At Wave News, and then he was working for an agency here in town, and he's a big baseball guy, and he's a great communicator, loves the game, has a great sense of history. So the plan is for me to mentor him to step into my role whenever I do decide that it's time to retire, and I know that day will come. I don't know when it's going to be. When people ask me that question, I'm like, I really don't know. You'll know, though. I figure someday I'll wake up and go, maybe it's time. But, when I do get to that point, I think one of the things I want to do is a lot of community service work. Yeah. I want to be able to give back to the community in some way, and do a lot of things that can help people who are underserved or in situations where they need a hand up. Try to give some folks a hand up and try to do some good in this world. And you better keep telling stories, because, you are an incredible storyteller. Well, right? I've got a few. You've got a passion for that. You really, really do. I have a few. There's no question. I could probably write a book about it. Yes, you should. You should. But, I guess that could always be something I could potentially do, is going back all the way even back to my high school days, which is really kind of how I got started in all this. Yeah. I grew up near Cleveland, and when I was in high school, there was a junior achievement radio company at my high school. And I had a friend who was part of that, and he asked me if I wanted to come to one of their meetings. I'm like, yeah, sure, what the heck? And so then I found out that they were doing a weekly show on a radio station there on Sunday afternoons. They gave us an hour, to put together a radio broadcast, and they would broadcast it on the radio on Sunday afternoons. And so I'm like, well, I want to do sports. So I figured out a way to do sports, and that included going to Cleveland, going into Cleveland, downtown, or wherever else we needed to, and doing sports stories. And when Muhammad Ali, Louisville's own Muhammad Ali, came to Cleveland to fight a guy named Chuck Wepner, I thought, we got to go interview Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali's like right here. We got to go get him. How old were you? I was 17. Oh my gosh. 17, acting like you're 35. Yeah. Right? And so, let's go get this story. Yeah, let's go do it. And so a couple of buddies and I, on a Friday night, Ali was in town. We found out, I can't even remember how we found out. We found out that he and his entourage were staying at the Marriott Airport in Cleveland. And look at you working your sources at 17. Yeah, at 17, working those sources. And so we went, we drove there, went to the hotel, went into the lobby, and went up to the desk and said, hey, we introduced ourselves. We're the Junior Achievement Radio from
company from Sandusky High School, and we want to interview Muhammad Ali. And they're like, give us just a second. Well, they called this guy named Carmen Bellata, who was Muhammad Ali's PR guy, and he came down and he said, Junior Achievement, that's a great organization.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we'll help you guys out. He says, the champ's not here right now, but when he gets back, I'll make sure that you guys get to interview him. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. This is so cool. So this was my first lesson in being in the news business of hurry up and wait.
Yes. Yes.
Which all of us who ever worked in that business know about hurry up and wait. So you hurry up to get there because the story is about to happen, right? And then, oh, wait, well, now we got to wait. Is all this other. And so we waited and we waited and we waited. And it got to be almost 10 o'clock at night and he still wasn't back. And, this was way before cell phones. We couldn't call our parents on a cell phone or text them.
Downtown
so,
Cleveland.
we're like popping quarters and payphones to call our parents and say, hey, I'm not sure when I'm going to be home, but we're trying to get this interview with Muhammad Ali. And sure enough, Ali came in. We saw him come in. He had an entourage. And Carmen Bellata came and found us. He put us on the elevator with Ali and his entourage. And we went up to the 10th floor. We found out that Ali's entourage had the entire 9th and 10th floors of the Marriott Airport Hotel in Cleveland. And he took us into Ali's room, and Ali sat down on a sofa, and I've got a little photo that was taken with a Kodak Instamatic camera of Ali in like a floral print shirt on the sofa like this. And then there I am with long hair, 17-year-old, long-haired kid, holding a tape recorder with a microphone, interviewing Muhammad Ali. And in my basement storage stuff, I still had that cassette tape.
First interview?
That was my very first interview, Muhammad Ali.
That's a pretty good
so that's kind of a pretty good one. And then not long after that, Hank Aaron came to Cleveland to play against the Indians. His entire career had been in the National League. He started with the Milwaukee Braves, which then moved to Atlanta. And then at the tail end of his career, he went back to Milwaukee, which the Brewers at that time were an American League team. And he came to Cleveland, since they were in the American League, to play for the very first time. And so again, I'm like, Hank Aaron is coming. We got to go interview him. And so
Second interview.
Yes. Yeah. And so sure enough, got a hold of the media relations folks with the Cleveland Indians, and they got a buddy and I credentials to get on the field, and we went in. We interviewed Hank Aaron, and I've got pictures of that. Same thing. Me in a big Windsor knot fat tie with a microphone in Hank Aaron's face in the Brewers clubhouse. So when Hank Aaron came back to Louisville Slugger, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I talked to him about that, and I'm kidding around with him. So you remember that, of course, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you can't think about, imagine how many people Hank Aaron has met in his life, but I was joking around with him. And I did the same thing with Frank Robinson, who was the first African-American manager of Major League Baseball with the Cleveland Indians. And I got to do a story with him as well.
Then you had the bug.
And I had the bug.
Yeah.
That's when I knew, wow, you get to I'm gonna get paid for this. You get paid to do this. And so that was the catalyst for me to know I wanted to go into that type of work for a career.
Yeah.
And so here I am.
I'm telling you, Act 2 can be American baseball stories.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd listen.
Especially when I think about all the people I've met over my career and been able to develop relationships with or know this person who has access to that person, I think that could be a potential next chapter.
There's lots of lessons to be learned from all that I think we crave these days.
Yeah, we do. You're right. And yeah, there's so much to be learned from all these people who have lived these lives and been through all these things that they've been through.
And what a testament to them to be able to share their story again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's one of the things we talked a little bit about the Living Legend Award. And when these guys come in, and they love being able to stand there and tell those stories and share those stories. We see these professional athletes a lot of times, we're being asked to have pictures taken and sign autographs. And most of them are cordial enough to do it. And some are super and are always happy to do it. And there are some are kind of, get a little crusty about it and don't want to do it. And one of the things that I've seen through my career is that a lot of these guys, after they've been away from the spotlight for a number of years, even those guys who were not so favorable about having a picture taken or signing an autograph, all of a sudden realize, you know what, that wasn't that bad.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden these guys kind of crave that and are willing to maybe make up for some of the misfortunes of the past of not participating in that kind of activity.
They realize the impact they can have on a young person's life.
They do.
Right?
They do.
That kid is never going to forget that interaction.
Exactly.
You didn't forget any of
Exactly.
your interviews or interactions that you had at the age of 17.
Right.
So,
And so
imagine some kid that is craving some direction in their life or somebody just to see them, to have that. It's a very big deal.
It really is. And it
Baseball
kind of
gives us
goes back to what I mentioned about you just don't know what people are going through. And so when a kid's asking for an autograph, you don't know what that kid's going through. And so help them out, give them that autograph and give them a pat on the back.
Well, Rick, always a pleasure catching up with you. Thank
Always
you
a pleasure
so much.
to be with you.
All right. Thank you so much for watching the podcast. No matter where you're watching this right now, please leave a review because that gets the word out about this particular podcast. So until next week, have a good one, everybody. Cheers.